Cruelty, in its many forms, can be one of the most damaging forces we encounter in life. It's not just about physical harm or harsh words. Cruelty also takes the shape of indifference, neglect, or deliberate emotional manipulation. But what happens when we experience cruelty? How does it truly affect us? More than just a temporary wound, cruelty has the potential to erode our spirit, poisoning our thoughts, emotions, and relationships. Cruelty is often mistaken for strength, but the Stoics knew better. They taught that true power lies not in domination, but in self-control, wisdom, and virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Yet, in today's world, cruelty is everywhere, on social media, in politics, even in our daily interactions. But what is the real cost of cruelty? What does it do to the one who inflicts it? When we are victims of cruelty, the immediate pain is easy to recognize. But what about the long-lasting effects? The truth is that cruelty leaves an imprint on the soul. Over time, it fosters bitterness, anger, and resentment, robbing us of our inner peace. It leads us to question our self-worth, distorting our perception of the world and others. Instead of building resilience, it can make us fragile, too afraid to trust or love again. The true cost of cruelty isn't just the pain inflicted in the moment, it's the way it lingers, slowly breaking us down from the inside out. In this video, we'll explore the deeper impact of cruelty on the human soul. We'll dive into the psychological, emotional, and even spiritual toll it takes, and understand how it can be a silent destroyer. But we won't stop there. By learning from Stoic wisdom and understanding how we can overcome the damage, we'll explore ways to heal, rebuild, and rise above the cruelty we face. Stick around, because this journey toward inner healing and strength is something we all need. Number 1. The impact of cruelty on the human spirit. Cruelty, whether inflicted upon others or harbored within, corrodes the human spirit in ways that often go unnoticed until the damage is too deep to reverse. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This timeless wisdom reflects the Stoic belief that cruelty is not just an act, but a state of being, one that poisons the soul of both the giver and the receiver. To embrace cruelty, even in response to injustice, is to allow one's character to be reshaped by malice. The cost of cruelty is not merely in the harm it inflicts upon others, it is in the way it distorts our perception, hardens our hearts, and blinds us to our own potential for growth. Each act of cruelty, no matter how seemingly justified, chips away at the integrity of the soul, replacing compassion with resentment and wisdom with bitterness. The insidious nature of cruelty is that it disguises itself as strength, tricking people into believing that harshness is necessary for survival. Seneca cautioned against this illusion when he wrote, "A good character, when established, is not altered by anything that happens." Yet in a world that often rewards power over principle, many abandon their virtues in pursuit of control. When cruelty becomes a habit, it reshapes the very fabric of one's identity, turning what was once a mind rooted in discipline and resilience into a vessel for anger and dominance. The more one indulges in cruelty, the more distant one becomes from their true self, losing the ability to find peace, contentment, and even purpose. The human spirit thrives on kindness and understanding. To embrace the opposite is to engage in a slow, silent destruction of the very essence that makes life meaningful. Even those who suffer cruelty are at risk of internalizing its effects, often carrying the burden long after the wounds should have healed. Epictetus reminds us, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." While suffering at the hands of others is beyond our control, allowing cruelty to define us is a choice. The victim of cruelty faces two paths: to perpetuate the cycle by mirroring the behavior they endured, or to rise above it, refusing to let another's malice dictate their future. Too often, people become trapped in the echoes of past suffering, using it as a justification to inflict pain upon others. But cruelty, even when rooted in self-defense, is never a path to strength. It is a concession of power to those who first wielded it against us. The antidote to cruelty lies not in retaliation, but in self-mastery. A mind disciplined in virtue does not succumb to the need for vengeance or control. Stoicism teaches that true power comes from governing oneself, from maintaining composure when provoked, and choosing wisdom over impulse. As Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Those who understand this principle do not allow cruelty to shape their actions, nor do they allow the hostility of others to corrupt their inner peace. Instead, they cultivate a mind that remains unshaken by the storms of the world, steadfast in the pursuit of growth rather than destruction. To break free from the grip of cruelty, one must commit to self-reflection and discipline, refusing to let the world dictate their character. The human spirit, though fragile, possesses an immense capacity for transformation. Those who choose virtue over malice, kindness over hostility, and wisdom over revenge are the ones who truly flourish. The cost of cruelty is too great a burden to bear, for it does not just harm others, it withers the soul from within. Number 2. The unseen wounds of cruelty. Cruelty does not always announce itself with violence or harsh words. Sometimes it is quiet, lingering in the shadows of indifference, dismissiveness, or betrayal. The deepest wounds are often the ones unseen, shaping a person in ways they barely recognize. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But when cruelty strikes, it invades the mind, altering one's perception of self-worth, trust, and the world at large. A kind heart does not break all at once. It erodes piece by piece as small wounds accumulate. The most dangerous part of cruelty is not the pain it causes in the moment, but the long-term damage it does to the soul. A child who is constantly dismissed learns to question their own voice. A friend who is repeatedly betrayed stops believing in loyalty. A lover who is met with coldness slowly stops reaching out. These are not dramatic moments of destruction, but slow, steady fractures that weaken the spirit. Seneca warned, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." But cruelty makes fear real, teaching people to shrink themselves to avoid pain. It builds walls where openness once thrived and instills doubt where confidence once stood. These wounds may not be visible, but they shape every choice, every interaction, every belief about what is possible. True strength, according to the Stoics, lies in mastering the self rather than controlling others. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Yet the burden of cruelty is that it alters reactions before a person even realizes it. A once trusting soul grows hesitant. A once expressive spirit becomes guarded. This is the true cost, not just the immediate suffering, but the slow distortion of one's essence. A person who has been wounded too many times learns to expect harm even where none exists, closing themselves off from opportunities, relationships, and experiences that could have brought joy. Stoic wisdom teaches resilience, not in denying pain, but in recognizing its power and choosing how to respond. "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," wrote Aurelius. "If cruelty is left unchallenged, it stains the soul, making bitterness, resentment, and fear the dominant colors." But there is always a choice: to allow cruelty to define us or to rise above it, to become hardened or to transform pain into wisdom. This is the lesson. Cruelty has power only when we let it take root. The wounds may be unseen, but they are not beyond healing. It is in understanding this that true freedom begins. Number 3, the cascading effects of harmful actions. A single cruel act does not end with the one who suffers it. Like ripples on the surface of a pond, harm spreads outward, touching lives in ways unseen. A harsh word spoken in anger might seem insignificant, but its impact lingers long after the moment has passed. Marcus Aurelius warned, "What injures the hive injures the bee." Cruelty is never isolated. It wounds not only the one who receives it, but also the one who delivers it and those who witness it. A father, hardened by the weight of his own suffering, raises his voice in frustration, and his child, once eager, now hesitates before speaking. That child, carrying the burden of rejection, grows into an adult who struggles to trust. The pain moves forward, weaving itself into lives untouched by the original act, distorting relationships and shaping the world in unseen ways. Harm is not always intentional, but its effects remain the same. A leader seeking control speaks with cruelty, believing it will command respect. Instead, it plants fear and resentment, weakening the very foundation on which trust should stand. "No man is free who is not master of himself," wrote Epictetus. The inability to govern one's own impulses, to let anger dictate action, is a form of slavery, one that binds not just the aggressor, but all who fall within his reach. The worker who feels undervalued carries his frustration home, speaking sharply to his children. Those children, confused by their father's coldness, withdraw, carrying forward a lesson they never meant to learn. That power is taken, not given, and that kindness is a weakness rather than a strength. At times, cruelty is delivered in silence rather than words. A betrayal, a broken promise, an absence where presence was needed, all have the power to alter a life's course. Seneca reminds us, "He who does not prevent a wrong when he can is just as guilty as the one who commits it." The harm done by inaction can be as great as the harm done by a deliberate act. A friend who turns away in another's time of need teaches abandonment. A teacher who dismisses a struggling student reinforces failure. A leader who ignores injustice allows it to thrive. The absence of kindness, when it is most needed, is its own form of cruelty, setting off a chain reaction that shapes lives in ways no one can predict. The Stoics teach that true strength lies in breaking the cycle of harm, in choosing to be the one who ends suffering rather than passing it forward. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it, Aurelius instructed. A single moment of cruelty can spread like wildfire, but so can a single moment of kindness. The choice to respond with patience rather than anger, to offer understanding rather than judgment, has the power to halt the cascade of harm. Where cruelty seeks to multiply itself, wisdom demands that it end with us. That is the lesson. To master the self is to master the world, for in our smallest actions lie the seeds of what the future will become. Number 4, the unending cycle of pain and suffering. Pain, once inflicted, does not simply disappear. It moves, shifts, and reshapes itself, finding new vessels to inhabit. A cruel remark, a betrayal, an act of violence, none of these remain contained within the moment they occur. Instead, they carve wounds deep into the human spirit, wounds that, if left untended, fester and spread. Epictetus once said, "When someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval." But what happens when cruelty steals that grounding? When a person learns through suffering that the world is harsh, they often harden themselves in response, passing forward the pain they once received. A child, neglected by those meant to protect him, grows into an adult who struggles to express love. A person betrayed finds it easier to deceive than to trust. The cycle continues, repeating itself endlessly unless someone chooses to break it. The mind, when shaped by cruelty, learns to see threats where none exist. A simple mistake becomes an attack. An innocent remark feels like a condemnation. Marcus Aurelius advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But cruelty strips that power away, making a person feel like a prisoner of their past. A victim of cruelty often wrestles with self-doubt, replaying moments of pain, questioning their worth. In time, that doubt hardens into anger or detachment. Hurt people hurt others, not always out of malice, but because they no longer believe in the possibility of kindness. This is how suffering perpetuates itself, through the unspoken lessons that pain teaches, convincing its victims that inflicting harm is the only way to regain control. Seneca warned, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Yet cruelty conditions the mind to anticipate harm, preparing for suffering even when there is none. The body tenses at a raised voice, expecting a blow that never comes. A kind gesture is met with suspicion, for experience has taught that kindness often carries a hidden cost. The one who was once a victim becomes defensive, lashing out before they can be hurt again. This too is part of the cycle, where self-preservation slowly transforms into aggression, and those who sought only to protect themselves become the very thing they once feared. The Stoics believed in reason over impulse, in choosing how to respond rather than allowing pain to dictate one's actions. "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy," Aurelius wrote, but in the grip of suffering, that wisdom is often forgotten. A wounded soul, desperate for relief, sometimes seeks comfort in the only language it understands, the language of cruelty. A leader, shaped by hardship, rules with an iron fist, believing that fear commands respect. A parent, once unloved, struggles to show warmth to their child, unknowingly continuing the same neglect they once endured. The chain of suffering lengthens, carried forward by those who never asked to bear it, but who now hold it in their hands. To break this cycle requires more than simply enduring pain. It requires understanding it, transforming it. "No man is free who is not master of himself," said Epictetus. True mastery is not found in retaliation, but in refusing to let suffering define one's actions, to choose patience over anger, to extend compassion where cruelty once reigned, is the only way to halt the unending cycle of pain. It is not an easy path, but it is the only one that leads to freedom. Number 5. How cruelty diminishes our true essence. Cruelty, when experienced repeatedly, has a way of diminishing the very core of who we are. It chips away at our confidence, our joy, and our capacity for compassion. "What we do now echoes in eternity," Marcus Aurelius once said, emphasizing how our actions reverberate long after they are done. This is true not only for acts of kindness, but also for acts of cruelty. Each time we encounter cruelty, whether it's directed at us or others, we are subtly affected. The mind begins to accept that the world is harsh and unforgiving, and in that environment, our best qualities, empathy, understanding, and openness, begin to fade. The more we are subjected to cruelty, the more we may find ourselves mirroring the same behavior, not because it aligns with our values, but because it feels like the only way to protect ourselves. Seneca taught that the mind is like a garden, and what we plant in it grows. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials, he said. But when that friction becomes cruelty, it does not polish the soul, it wears it down. The constant grind of harsh words, judgment, and indifference slowly erodes the foundation of our being. Where once there was a willingness to engage with the world openly and trustingly, now there is wariness, suspicion, and emotional withdrawal. The impact of cruelty is often not immediately visible, but it accumulates over time. Like a river that carves its path through the earth, cruelty forms deep grooves in the soul, shaping how we view ourselves and others. When we experience cruelty, we often internalize it. It is as if we absorb the hurt and allow it to define us. "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters," said Epictetus. But the cruelty we encounter can sometimes make it difficult to choose how we respond. Instead of seeing ourselves as worthy of respect and kindness, we begin to view ourselves as undeserving, as if the cruelty is a reflection of our own shortcomings. This internalized belief can lead to self-doubt, to a diminished sense of self-worth, and to a reluctance to express vulnerability. We may even start to believe that cruelty is an inevitability, a necessary part of life that must be endured. But in accepting this false narrative, we allow cruelty to diminish the very essence that makes us human, our capacity for love, for connection, and for growth. The real damage of cruelty lies not in the act itself, but in the way it transforms our perception of ourselves and the world. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, Marcus Aurelius noted. If cruelty becomes our focus, then cruelty shapes the way we see the world. It teaches us to expect harm rather than kindness, to prepare for disappointment rather than embrace possibility. As we hold on to these negative beliefs, we unknowingly begin to withhold kindness from ourselves and others. The cruel actions of others no longer seem like aberrations, but like the normal course of events. And in this process, the essence of who we are, the compassionate, hopeful, and connected being, becomes buried beneath layers of hurt and fear. To regain our true essence, we must reject the narrative that cruelty has written for us. We must remember that while cruelty may shape us, it does not define us. The Stoics believed that the only thing truly within our control is our response to external events. "You have power over your mind, not outside events," Aurelius said. The cruelty we face may alter our path, but it cannot alter our core unless we allow it to. By choosing not to internalize the pain, by remembering who we truly are, we can begin to reclaim our essence. We can start to see ourselves not as victims of cruelty, but as resilient beings capable of responding with kindness, strength, and love. Number 6. Overcoming the grip of malice. When malice grips the heart, it distorts the soul, poisoning everything it touches. Epictetus, in his timeless wisdom, once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Malice, often born out of perceived injustice or hurt, blinds us to this truth. We become consumed with thoughts of revenge or retaliation, imagining that these will somehow right the wrongs done to us. Yet, in holding on to this bitterness, we only bind ourselves to the very pain we wish to escape. Instead of freeing ourselves from the hurt, we allow it to fester and grow, consuming our peace and joy. The Stoics recognized that to carry malice is to let an external wrong define your inner state, and in doing so, we lose our mastery over ourselves. The cost of malice is not just the damage it does to others, but the destruction it wreaks upon the one who holds it. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Every thought steeped in malice stains our character, warping it from something noble and virtuous to something dark and vengeful. The more we dwell on the wrongs done to us, the more we allow ourselves to become defined by them. The Stoics, however, knew that we are not our hurt or our anger. Instead, they taught us that we are the ones who choose how to respond to life's inevitable challenges. By holding on to malice, We are not avenging ourselves. We are allowing those wrongs to control us, shaping our actions and emotions in ways that detract from our true purpose in life. To overcome malice is not to deny our feelings of hurt, but to rise above them with wisdom and grace. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." In this, he called upon us to recognize that our reactions are within our control. When we encounter the cruelty or injustice of others, we are presented with an opportunity to become enslaved by our emotions or to exercise the freedom to choose a higher path. This does not mean suppressing or ignoring our anger, but transforming it. One powerful instance of this can be seen in the life of Marcus Aurelius himself, who, despite facing betrayal and personal loss, chose to respond with equanimity rather than vengeance. His ability to rise above the hostility around him is a shining example of Stoic wisdom in action. Instead of retaliating, he used those challenges as opportunities to reinforce his virtues, showing us that the strength to overcome malice lies not in fighting back, but in remaining steadfast in our character. Forgiveness, according to the Stoics, is not an act of kindness towards others, but an act of liberation for ourselves. Forgiveness is the noblest of virtues, for it is the key that unlocks the chains of the soul, said Marcus Aurelius. When we forgive, we are not excusing the harm done to us, but releasing ourselves from the grip of malice. Holding on to resentment is like holding a burning coal in our hand, hoping to harm another. We only burn ourselves. The true act of strength is to let go of that coal, to free ourselves from the desire for revenge, and to reclaim our peace. This does not mean that the wrong is forgotten, but that we choose to no longer let it dictate our emotions or our actions. We regain control by choosing to rise above it. The Stoic lesson on overcoming malice is profound, for it reveals that our greatest strength lies not in conquering others, but in mastering ourselves. As Epictetus said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When we dwell on the wrongs done to us, we inflate them in our minds, allowing them to take up more space than they deserve." To free ourselves, we must learn to detach from these imagined injustices, recognizing them for what they are, fleeting moments in time that do not define us. By choosing not to let malice take root, by practicing forgiveness and restraint, we regain our inner peace. The grip of malice, while tempting, is a prison that we have the power to escape. One thought, one choice at a time. Number 7. The strength found in inner healing. The wounds of cruelty are deep, yet the Stoics believed that the strength to heal lies not in the world outside, but in the world within. As Marcus Aurelius put it, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." The scars of cruelty can leave lasting impressions on the heart and mind, but they do not define us unless we allow them to. When life tests us, when we encounter injustice or suffering, the Stoics urge us to look inward, to find within ourselves the fortitude to rise above the wounds. It is not the harm done to us that determines our future, but our response to it. True strength is born from the ability to choose how we react, and in choosing to heal rather than to hold on to the hurt, we reclaim our power. The notion that healing comes from within is echoed throughout Stoic thought, which teaches that while external circumstances may be beyond our control, our inner world is ours to govern. Epictetus wisely stated, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The pain of cruelty can linger, but it is only through our responses, our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, that we allow it to shape us. A Stoic does not ignore their pain or pretend it does not exist. Rather, they acknowledge it, confront it, and then transform it. Through the cultivation of wisdom, self-discipline, and inner peace, the Stoic learns that they have the power to heal from within, using their suffering as a catalyst for growth. Healing, in the Stoic sense, is not about erasing pain or pretending it didn't happen. It is about understanding that our true essence is unshaken by external harm. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reminded himself that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the very things that threaten to harm us are often the very things that help us grow stronger. When we face cruelty, we can either allow it to break us, or we can choose to use it as a stepping stone for personal transformation. The Stoic sees suffering as an opportunity to practice virtues like patience, resilience, and empathy. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, they turn adversity into an opportunity to exercise their inner strength. An essential lesson of Stoic healing is that peace does not come from the absence of pain, but from the ability to maintain composure in the face of it. Epictetus taught, "It's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." The act of healing, then, is less about the pain itself and more about how we frame it in our minds. When faced with cruelty, we can choose to view it as an affront to our dignity or as a challenge to our character. The Stoic path is not one of passive resignation, but one of active engagement with our inner world. We learn to detach from the emotional charge that cruelty brings, recognizing that we are not defined by others' actions, but by our own responses. The journey of inner healing, according to Stoic wisdom, is one of continuous self-reflection and self-mastery. By cultivating a deep awareness of our thoughts and emotions, we can begin to let go of the toxic narratives we build around our suffering. Seneca observed, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." So often, our minds exaggerate the cruelty done to us, dwelling on past hurts and fears of future suffering. The Stoics encourage us to break free from these mental traps, to focus on what is within our control, and to cultivate a mindset of resilience. Through mindfulness and conscious effort, we can rebuild ourselves from the inside out, finding strength in our capacity to rise above pain and emerge wiser, more compassionate, and more at peace. Number 8. The journey toward personal transformation. Cruelty, in its many forms, leaves an indelible mark on the soul, but the Stoics believed that transformation lies in how we respond to it. As Epictetus wisely said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The journey toward personal transformation begins with this realization that external events, no matter how painful, have no power over us unless we allow them to. Cruelty may come from others, but how we choose to internalize and respond to that cruelty is entirely within our control. It is this ability to govern our thoughts and reactions that opens the door to profound personal growth. Rather than be crushed by the weight of unjust treatment, we have the power to transform it into a catalyst for inner strength and wisdom. The Stoic approach to personal transformation emphasizes the importance of self-discipline and introspection. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the trials of life, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This means that every obstacle, every cruelty, and every challenge can be the very thing that propels us toward growth if we choose to face it with courage and purpose. Transformation does not occur in moments of comfort, but in moments of struggle. When we are met with cruelty, we can either let it defeat us or use it as a stepping stone for self-mastery. The Stoic sees each painful experience as an opportunity to cultivate virtues like patience, resilience, and wisdom, turning hardship into an instrument for personal development. At the core of Stoic wisdom is the belief that personal transformation is not about changing the world around us, but about changing how we engage with it. Epictetus reminds us, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The Stoic understands that their true power lies not in manipulating external circumstances, but in mastering their own internal responses. When faced with cruelty, rather than sinking into bitterness or revenge, the Stoic reflects on how they can maintain their composure, clarity, and sense of purpose. It is this focus on the internal that ultimately leads to a transformation of character, as we learn to prioritize virtue over the fleeting emotions of anger and resentment. In the process of transformation, the Stoics teach that it is essential to detach from the ego. Seneca wisely observed, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Our egos often inflate the significance of the wrongs done to us, making them feel larger than life. The Stoic seeks to dismantle this inflated sense of self-importance by recognizing that the world does not revolve around our individual grievances. Transformation comes when we learn to let go of the need for external validation and embrace the idea that our worth is not defined by how others treat us, but by how we treat ourselves. By cultivating humility and focusing on what is within our control, we open ourselves to a deeper, more enduring form of peace. Personal transformation, as the Stoics saw it, is a lifelong journey of self-improvement, one where every moment is an opportunity to align our actions with our highest ideals. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In this, he encapsulated the essence of Stoic transformation, that we should rise above cruelty, not by returning harm, but by embodying the virtues we wish to see in the world. Each encounter with malice offers us the chance to strengthen our resolve, to deepen our wisdom, and to refine our character. Through consistent practice of self-control, reflection, and virtuous action, we move ever closer to the highest form of personal transformation, where our peace remains unshaken by the cruelty of the world. As we've seen today, the cost of cruelty is far more than just the immediate hurt. It's the long-term damage it causes to the soul. Cruelty wears away our peace, distorts our sense of self, and keeps us trapped in cycles of anger and resentment. But the good news is, we don't have to stay there. The power to heal, to rebuild, and to reclaim our inner peace is within us. By understanding the impact of cruelty and using tools like self-reflection, emotional mastery, and Stoic wisdom, we can rise above the scars it leaves. If this video resonated with you, remember that you're not alone in this journey. Healing starts with awareness, and now that you understand how cruelty destroys, you can take steps toward reclaiming your peace. Practice compassion, nurture your inner strength, and keep choosing kindness, both for yourself and for others. If you found value in today's video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more insightful content on personal growth and healing. And if you've experienced cruelty, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's build a community of strength, understanding, and support. Together, we can overcome the impact of cruelty and rebuild our souls.